Live. Morning everyone, we're now in a live public meeting. So this is the first meeting of the Water Organisation Joint Committee. As there has not yet been a chair appointed, I'll do the first part of the meeting wearing the administrative agent role that Tauranga City Council does on behalf of the partnership. And then once you've appointed a chair, I'll move from the chair and the person who's appointed will resume the chair. So this is the first meeting of the Joint Committee. The terms of reference have been approved by each of the councils under the Local Government Act. I think it's important just to make yourself aware of the role and scope of this committee as it moves forward. I'll ask Hakupa to give us an opening karakia, please.
Tēnā koe e Christine. Tēnā tātou, māku tō tātou kaupapa. Hui e whakatūwhera. Kia tau mai ai te tō mairangi ata whai o te wāhi ngaro o nā mātua tupuna ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia māhea i te ua mā kihikihi, te ua mā taratara. Nā ahuatanga mā nuka e pēhi ai tātou. Kia pua wai mai te māramatanga, kia eke panuku, eke tangaroa, haumi e hui e. Kia ora tātou.
Just in terms of health and safety, if the alarm sounds, please make your way to the nearest emergency exit. The assembly point for us is down on Devonport Road to the north. Please be aware that the meeting is being live streamed and the video will be publicly available on YouTube. Members, could you please remember to speak clearly into your microphones and only one speaker at a time. There are no apologies today. All members of the committee are present. There are no public forum.
Could I ask, where are the toilets?
The toilets are through these doors here, and council staff will help you swipe to access them. If you require, yeah. There is no confidential items on this agenda. There's no proposed change to order of business unless I've got any alternate views. Are there any members that would like to declare any interests? Nope, we're good to go. Okay. So the first report on the agenda has been put forward by Tauranga City Council and Western Bay staff. It is in respect of the appointment of the chair and the deputy chair. So the resolutions that were passed by the councils and reflected in the terms of reference is that where there is no independent chair, the chair shall be a member of the committee, being either a Tauranga City Council member or a Western Bay Plenty District Council member. That chair role will be on a rotational basis, and whichever council is in the chair, then the other council will be in the deputy chair role, and that the frequency of the rotation is to be approved by the committee. So the purpose of this report is to do two things. For this committee to appoint a chair and a deputy chair, and to approve the rotation period. It's been suggested from staff that a rotation period, the first period would go through to November 27. The benefit of that is that you would have from now 6 months prior to the organisation being up and running and 6 months after the organisation up and running. And if there were to be a new entity, another council join 1 July 28, would give you also your 6 months before and 6 months after. And it would also take you around about a year in each and take you to the next local government election. So we thought that sort of gave you continuity and gave the rotation in this triennium cycle. So that's the recommendation. So would anyone like to move a resolution in respect to this paper? Margaret?
I'd like... Oh, sorry.
I was going to nominate Councillor Roseburn for chair.
And I was seconding that.
I'm happy to nominate Councillor Roseburn for chair.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so just for any new guests in this chamber, so if you're speaking, push the right-hand button, which will make the red light go. If you finish speaking, turn it off because another person won't be able to speak. If your microphone's green, that means it's actually not working because someone else has still got a red mic on. So just if you just in this chamber. So back to you, Medenia.
third time lucky. I'd like to nominate Councillor Roseboom to be chair.
So we've got a recommendation to appoint Councillor Rosenboom as the chair. Do you want, as which would then mean that it would be a Western Bay Plenty councillor in the deputy chair role?
And I'd like to nominate Mayor Denyer as deputy chair.
So the resolution we've got on the table is appoint Mayor Martin Rosenboom, Councillor Rosenboom as the chairperson, and Mayor Denyer as the deputy chairperson, moved by Mayor Denyer and seconded by Councillor Rosenboom. Is there any discussion on that matter? Is there any discussion in terms of the recommendation on the rotation cycle? Are you comfortable moving both the resolutions? Okay, so we've got all three resolutions. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you. I will move away from the chair.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking the committee for this opportunity to chair. Looking forward to the challenge and the able support of all the members of this committee to achieving a successful, well-functioning waters organisation. Just a few points I'd like to point out as the chair in relation to this committee. If you look at our scope, I'd like us to give some consideration this week before the next committee meeting how we intend as a committee to reach our consensus, as we are a consensus body, not a decision-making body. I'd like us to have some consideration between now and our next committee meeting how we as a group intend to achieve that without giving the appearance of already giving a vote. So how do we reach a consensus by which we can give recommendations to our respective councils that helps move the organisation and its foundation documents forward. On that, I'd like to move on to item 2 of our agenda. I believe it is in item 8.2, recruitment of the board and update. I believe Christine Jones is giving an update.
So again, just wearing the administrative Asian hat on behalf of the partnership, just give you an update on where we're at with the board recruitment process. So the process is being undertaken by Jackson Stone, which is an independent recruitment company. The roles were widely advertised. We received 53 applications. We have been working on those, and there is now a long list to interview of 12 candidates. Through the joint working group, you and subsequently council resolved a skill set matrix for boards, and so the applicants that have come through, we are assessing them against that skill set with the view, as per the direction that you gave us, to get a balance of those skill sets across the board. We are looking for the first three appointments, but if there are more suitable candidates that could make a good mix in terms of a skill, it may well be that the interview panel comes back and recommends more than 3 if approved, and with phased starting, so with the first 3 starting in August and with the others then coming on at a later point. But that will be something that the interview panel comes back with their recommendations to you at that time. Interviews are scheduled at this stage for early July. The panel is made up from a member of each of the partners, so Tauranga City Council, Western Bay and Tangata Whenua. And we also have Revenge Gerarum, who is the independent expert advisor. He was also the expert advisor on the CE interview process. Ravine is the previous CEO of Watercare. He's the current board chair of Taumata ROI, which is New Zealand Water Services Regulator, and he's also the chair of New Zealand Infrastructure Commission. So he comes with a lot of knowledge, and we're really fortunate that he's agreed to be on the panel for us. And then we also have Miriam Terrace, who's coming in as the CE's rep with a lot of knowledge of local government and obviously the two councils. So we think that gives us a really strong interview panel. So will be likely that late July, sometime in August, would be looking to have the actual appointments coming through to the council. So under the terms of reference, it would come to this committee and flow through, and then to get those board members up and through an induction process. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Christina? Deputy Mayor Murray Bench.
I think what I'm about to say is something for the whole committee, actually. When we appoint the directors, the first one should be the chairman of directors, and I think that it would be a kindness for continuity and a culture within the directorship for the chairman to be involved with the appointment of the other two directors. I don't know how others feel, but I think it would be worthwhile.
We've, amongst ourselves, had a little bit of informal conversation at how that might work. So we absolutely agree that's very sensible. So the thinking would be when the panel has identified their preferred chairperson, that you would then have a conversation with that preferred. So when we've gone through the recruitment process, we've asked candidates to identify whether they're interested in the chair role, a director non-chair role, or both. So we know of the candidates that we've got on the list which of those are interested in a chair's role. So then I would think if the panel identify their preferred chair, they would have that conversation with the chair. And then if the other candidates are comfortable with their name being shared with the preferred chair candidate, then that conversation could happen in advance. So I think as long as both parties agree that they're happy for their names to be shared, because obviously all applications are confidential, then you could get the preferred chair's candidate's view on the other candidates that are coming through strongly in the interview process. So I think we can just do that by a mutual conversation. So yeah.
Any more? I thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. Any more questions? If there are no further questions, I'd like to move that we accept the verbal update on the Waters Organisation board progress. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Schuler, a seconder. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8.3, update from our newly appointed Water Organisation Chief Executive, Kevin Lavery. The floor is yours. Your update, sir.
Kia ora, everyone. I thought what I would do is a short introduction, a bit about myself, some of my experience that I think is relevant to the task we face and how we'll approach that. I'm then going to show you the 50-day review, which is going to be in the form of a video. We'll pause at that point, take some feedback, and then I've got some slides we can run through on some of the big issues, if that's okay. You are going to experience a bit of my own artwork, so I'll warn you in advance. So a bit about me. I was born into the Irish community in the East End of Newcastle. Newcastle was famous for the Industrial Revolution, cue first sketch. It was where the Stevenson brothers built the internet of the Victorian age, which was the railway. And it was also where Joseph Swan lit the first light bulb. Forget about Thomas Edison, Swan got there first. Edison was about to sue Swan until he discovered that Swan had indeed conducted the experiment a couple of months earlier in front of 200 witnesses at the Newcastle Literary and Philosophical Society. But Edison was very smart. He followed the philosophy, if you can't beat them, join them. So he joined forces with Swan to create the first electric light bulb company, Eddie Swan United. Interesting name. Newcastle was also the world's coal capital. Next sketch, the famous Tyne Bridges. When I was a youngster, the sandstone Georgian and Victorian buildings were covered in black coal soot, and the River Tyne was really heavily polluted. There were no fish where the city was. It was that polluted. Today, those buildings are back to their original sandstone best, and you can fish for salmon on the quayside in the middle of the city. And that happened because of fresh water and Three Waters reforms that began in the 1980s in the UK. And that's Te Mana o Te Wai in action. That's the opportunity we have, actually. Now, when I was growing up in the city in the 70s and 80s, it had record unemployment, the traditional industries were collapsing, and the city actually had riots. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. I was inspired by the City Council's attempts to regenerate Newcastle, don't laugh, as the Brasilia of the Northern Hemisphere, a place of hope where anything is possible. And one development captured my imagination. It was a council estate called the Byker Wall. Next sketch. The Byker Wall was a humble council estate. It housed 4,000 families, huge development. It was in stark contrast to the brutalism of the 1960s and 70s, concrete brutalism. It used vibrant colors, soft landscaping, and was built around people and communities. And the development was actually listed by UNESCO as one of the landmark buildings of the 20th century, and it stood the test of time. In 2017, it was named Britain's best community. The Byker Wall showed that a council could transform people and communities and do something special, and I think that's the opportunity we have here in the Western Bay area with water reform. Now, you might not guess it from my youthful looks, but I'm a 10-time chief executive, believe it or not. I was the youngest CEO of a large council in the UK at the age of 36 some years ago in my home city of Newcastle. I was actually chief executive in my home city. And I also delivered the Amalgamated Council for Cornwall, which is a big region of 600,000 people, hence the Cornwall sketch, tin mining area. We had a very small number of councillors in Cornwall, 123. 123 councillors. It was very political. The place leaked like a sieve. So I was very well prepared for 7 years in New Zealand's most political local body, the City of Wellington, which I joined in 2013. The Wellington sketch, yeah. I've worked in the private sector. I actually founded a digital startup business a long time ago that's thriving today with 2,000 staff and 400 million turnover. So I've been working in the private sector as well as local government. I set up a health region as well, worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers internationally as a consultant. So pretty varied background. And more recently, I've been working in water in New Zealand and over the hill. In Hamilton and Waikato district. And one of my specialties has been setting up new entities. So I set up a digital startup from scratch. I was the first employee. I established the Como Council as an amalgamation of 7 councils into one. We had over 20,000 staff, believe it or not. And I set up NHS Lancashire and South Cumbria with a $11 billion budget. Incredible. And I was more recently the executive chair. I was more recently the executive chair and acting chief executive for EOY, which is the new ward entity for Hamilton and Waikato district. EOY goes live in 2 weeks' time. It's looking pretty good. And yesterday, the board signed off the long-term plan and pricing plan for the good folk of Hamilton and Waikato District. It halved the planned increase inherited from the two councils. It agreed a growth levy for the 2,000 new households they get every year. That will generate millions of dollars of revenue for the new ward entity to do more for growth going forward. It signed off a 10-year renewals partnership that will increase renewals investment by 60%, which is what water reform is really about over the next 3 to 4 years. And they've completed a water meter pilot. We've already got it here in the Bay Area, but they don't have it in Hamilton. They have it in Waikato District, but they're going to roll that out in Hamilton over the next 4 years. That was agreed yesterday too. And they've also got a number of big investments in the wastewater treatment area, which are about joining up the two jurisdictions to have a single water network going forward. And I think that's one of the big opportunities we have here in the Bay as well. And most of New Zealand doesn't have that opportunity. The water entities are really a shared service sitting over a big rural area with a lot of disparate little networks that are never going to be joined up. But here we can join it up and do something special and improve resilience as well as do things faster, better, smarter and cheaper. And finally, they agreed the digital platform, which is with Tauranga and Western Bay. So that's something the two ward entities are doing together. So quite a nationally significant program, that one on the digital side. And just to finish off on the EOI experience, I think that's really helpful for Tauranga and Western Bay. But in a nutshell, everything you're planning to do here, I've already been doing in Hamilton and Waikato District. And they have a very similar growth agenda to Tauranga and Western Bay. So I think that's really helpful. And I unashamedly want to draw on that EOI experience to help us do water reform faster, better, smarter, and cheaper for the good folk of Tauranga and Western Bay. These new entities have been, I think all of the new entities I've been involved with, the key thing is to get a smooth transition to go live and to build confidence so you can do the bigger challenges later on, if that makes sense. And all the time you're doing this on political eggshells, and that's particularly true of water reform. It's been quite controversial. It's going to be high in the news. It's going to be front page news. So in Cornwall, for example, when we did the amalgamation, it was viewed by Whitehall, the civil servants and the ministers, as the highest risk of the 2009 unitaries that came in on the 1st of April. Yet we got over the line without any surprises or mess-ups. We fixed the broken services. We moved out of government intervention. We dealt with huge austerity cuts in the UK. We had a reduction in grants of $400 million, believe it or not, $400 million. We had rates freeze for 5 years. It was tough times, but it came through it strongly. We were the first council to implement the Cameron government's economic development reforms. We got top ratings from all of the external regulators. UK local government is very heavily regulated. We don't have that here yet. And we got high praise from a review by the chair of the Local Government Association in England and Wales of the council. Now, I think we face similar challenges in the Bay Area and also equally amazing opportunities. This is all about staying calm, being optimistic and realistic, dreaming but keeping your feet firmly on the ground. And in the words of Rudyard Kipling, if you can dream and not make dreams your master. Now, as a Roman Catholic, it's probably fitting that I begin with a few confessions. So firstly, I do have an allergic reaction to traditional PowerPoint presentations. You won't be getting that today. They are pretty painful, a bit irritating, and instantly forgettable. Secondly, I confess that I'm a bit of a doodler, and you've seen some of that already. You can tell when I'm getting bored because I start to doodle. And the sketches, it's all my own work, and you're going to see them in the video too. And final confession, I've spent the last 50 days getting out and about. I've met both workforces several times together. I've met lots of people separately on one-to-ones and groups. I've been out to many of the communities across the 2 council areas and met lots of people, all the staff, lots of councillors, etc. So my confession is that I've been secretly doing a review as well on my travels. And I guess I've been assessing the inheritance I'm being gifted from the 2 councils. That's what I've been doing. And I've been asking myself 3 questions. What does a brilliant establishment programme look like? Number 1. Number 2, how do we measure up to that? And number 3, what, if anything, should we do differently to get over the line safely on the 1st of July 2027? So bear those 3 questions in mind when you watch the video. Now, I'm not a chief executive who outsources your job to a bunch of consultants with big fees and fancy suits. I think that's your job as the chief executive to do that review yourself, and it makes it authentic and you own it going forward. And I've called the presentation, the video, the good, the bad and the ugly. And it's my view, but in a way I'm showing you a mirror of what you told me on my travels, if that's okay, if that makes sense. So what I'd like you to do is, when you're watching the video, it's only 10 minutes. I'm keen to get your feedback. Does this feel on the right lines? Does this feel like Western Bay and Tauranga to you? Is there anything there that jars that I may have got wrong? And is there anything missing? So they're the 3 exam questions for you, and we'll pause after we've shown the video, and then I can run through some of the important topics like stormwater, how we'll approach staffing change, how we might get growth to pay for growth in a bit more detail afterwards, if that's okay. And if you like this approach, we could use it as a communication tool to proactively go out to different groups in the community, the iwi, probably at a hapu level, but also all the networks that exist to use what is there, ratepayer associations and community groups, developers, contractors, etc. I think you get the picture. But we would tailor it to each of those different audiences to make sure that we deal with the issues that are most important to them. So without further ado, we'll show the video and then we'll pause and then we can move on to the slides. So, Rachel. I hope that was a bit different, and happy to take feedback. Does it feel on the right lines? Is there anything missing? Is there anything there that you think I've got wrong? So over to you.
Mayor Denyer.
Well, thank you, Kevin. That was an awesome presentation and something a bit different, as you say. I think one of the questions that popped up in my head as it went through was you sought new income streams, and I just wondered where you saw those coming from. Obviously, that's a work stream in itself, but what are you exactly meaning by that?
I think there are a couple of things. One is about growth paying for growth. So I think really unpacking what happens now. It is different in the two councils. We've got development contributions in TCC and financial contributions in Western Bay, so it is slightly different. We're clearly going to need to harmonise that going forward. So reviewing those schemes would be one of the things that we need to do. We will find, and I've already been talking to the finance folk in Tauranga, and I've got to do the same in Western Bay, that there's a significant shortfall anyway. So really understanding that. Our systems in local government, when I worked in one of my private sector jobs in the UK, I was the managing director for local government of a company called Enterprise. It's been taken over by someone now, it doesn't exist anymore. But we had 31 maintenance contracts with local authorities, with the Royal Parks. We knew exactly where we were making money and where we were losing money. It's much harder in local government. Our systems aren't designed for that. So you need activity-based accounting really to understand that. So one of the things the water entities will have to do going forward is look at cost recovery across the board with all of their customers. And it's a change of culture and it's a change of system. Because in local government, we've got cross-subsidies going left, right and centre. So that I think there's an information thing. But in terms of growth paying for growth, there are areas. So in EOI, for example, yesterday we did formally adopt a growth levy. So from the 1st of July, to help growth pay for growth going forward, a new household will pay, so a new household that's consented after the 1st of July will pay a $500 charge on top of their water charges, because those developments have not been, they've been funded by existing ratepayers, is the truth of it. So that's over 25 years, in line with the IFF arrangements. That generates millions of dollars of new revenue going forward, which allows EOI to do more capital investments, so that hopefully you get a virtuous circle going forward. So that's one of the examples.
One more question, if I may, Mr. Chair. I think as one thing I've noticed just in the last few months, and I'm sure it will carry on over the next year, is that as a council we're facing a number of fairly major decisions in the water space, but there's a reluctance to, or anxiety about making those decisions when we know that the water organisation is going to take over in a year's time, and you have the expertise and the support to do that. So the question is, how do you align or integrate that decision making with yours? Because we don't want to make a major multi-million-dollar decision, which, in a few months' time you say that was just a dumb decision, we'll have to unwind it. So what's your thinking there?
Well, CJ outlined earlier the board appointment process. So I think probably by the end of August, you will have, the two council, the panel will have appointed and the councils will have endorsed a board. So that probably then become operational in September. So one of the things I was going to cover in the slides later is empowering that board, so that effectively from the 1st of October, there's a bunch of strategic projects that they're going to pick up from you that you will ask and delegate to them to get on and make it happen. So that's, I think, one of the ways we can do that. I think the other way is we've got to, I know that you're going to have a lot of attention on, is it the Head Start program and amalgamation discussions, and you could lose interest in water. So we need to inspire you and show you what we can do. So we've got the opportunity of putting together the water services strategy, which is effectively the long-term plan for Tauranga and Western Bay in the water space. It needs to be exciting and matter to the customers out there with moderate bills, with exciting projects, and therefore we keep your interest. So I think they're the ways of dealing with that.
Honourable Kiritapu Allen.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation, illuminating. One of the questions, or one of the focuses throughout the presentation seemed to be on people capacity, workforce development, and I was wondering if you could talk through that a little more in terms of limitations, and then see if, I guess, your initial thinking in terms of opportunities. One of the things that particularly struck me as well, and you might want to speak to this specifically, was the age diversity within the workforce as well.
Really good question. So if you look over the last 10 years, we've had a lot of discussion around water reform, but actually on the ground, investments declined. And some of the contractors have laid off staff. Some of them have left to go to Australia. They probably won't come back. So that's the challenge. And we've got an aging workforce with something like, in Tauranga and Western Bay, 50% are within 15 years of retirement, okay? So that's the problem. Who's going to do the work? Because going forward, people are talking about doubling, tripling, in one water entity, 5-fold increase. So who's going to do the work with all of that in mind? That's the problem. How could we approach that? I think, first of all, being a very competent organisation. We're a good organisation to work with if you're a private sector partner. You want to work with Tauranga and Western Bay because our staff know what they're doing. The councils are good leaders and good custodians going forward. That's really important. I think the second thing is to make sure that we largely have an outsourced arrangement in water. Most of the real work is done by consultancies and contracting organisations. We need to be a very good partner with them. I think we should change the way we do contracting to have longer term arrangements with really good partners. We do already do some of this in Western Bay and Tauranga. We've got a 10-year partnership with Downers, for example. It's that sort of thing, having longer term arrangements, more of a partnership, broader relationships rather than lots of little short-term contracts, which is the tradition in the industry. Then if you look at our capital programs, they go big peaks and troughs. If you're moving into a market where there's a shortage of supply and price taking, i.e. the suppliers decide what the price is, you have no choice because you've only got one bid. That's the danger of where we're going. Having extreme peaks and troughs is not very wise. You need to smooth that out and then have your partners on long-term arrangements so that they can recruit apprentices and cadets. The next area is around moving away from that outsourcing culture to more of a mixed economy, so that the water organisation might pick some areas where it self-delivers and takes on staff to deliver. Now, that's not a straightforward thing. It comes with risk, and it will require investment. But it would, an example would be Watercare. Watercare spends a lot of money maintaining the water infrastructure network. And they have their own organisation which delivers a third of that maintenance work, and they have 2 private sectors operations which deliver the 2/3 of the maintenance. It helps keep the private sector honest, but it builds a role for the water services in direct delivery. And then the final area is iwi. I was quite intrigued by Ngāti Toa in the Wellington region, who have recently acquired a couple of maintenance companies, one on the South Island and one in the Hutt Valley, and they're going to play in the water maintenance space. Now, obviously, they would have to go through the normal, it's a competitive process, and they would need to do that. But that might be something we want to encourage, particularly in areas like stormwater. And then you look at the labour side of it. There are areas of hope. So within TCC's water treatment area, there's been quite a significant change there over the last few years. Got quite a young workforce in that space. Shows it can be done. In EOI, we've got a lot of female staff in the water space and a lot of female staff in senior management roles as well. So it can be done. I think you've got to target it. You've got to build relationships with the local universities. And those longer-term relationships with the privates allow them to recruit because they've got the certainty. I think that's the way forward. But it is going to be bumpy. We are going to face higher inflation because everywhere is going to be spending a lot of money at the same time. That's the challenge.
Councillor Galvin.
I thought I saw in your report, and I might be wrong, that you were talking about bringing the two staff teams over and then right-sizing in the organisation. And that seemed a bit counterintuitive to me, and particularly just in relation to your comments about the ageing workforce and the ability to recruit younger people and that sort of thing. They seem to be inconsistent to me. I'm just interested in your pros and cons of that. You've obviously thought about that, and I'm interested in the rationale behind why you would do that, because it didn't actually make sense to me.
Okay. So it's a management issue. But if we get the change process wrong, it will affect service delivery, and you'll have a lot of people knocking on your doors complaining. So this is a really important area. My focus is on a safe transition, that people know early what they're going to do for the new organisation. Some entities are throwing everything up in the air. They're forcing everyone to apply for their jobs. They're changing all of their terms and conditions and offering new ones. I definitely do not want to do that. That's very, very high risk. Bearing in mind what I've just been covering, there's a pretty high chance that you'll lose a lot of staff to other entities who are out to recruit, and you'll demotivate your workforce, which affects your service delivery. So that's what I want to avoid. There are three dimensions to it. Number one, get your plan sorted out early so people know early what they're going to do. Don't hang around until June next year. By Christmas, have it sorted so that people know, number one. Number two, how we do the change. Some change is needed, for sure, but only do the minimal change you need to get over the line and keep a stable workforce so that we've always got people there to deliver the service to the customer. So an example will be the engineering area. We're going to have duplication between the two council workforces. So it's obvious that we have to bring those teams together. We have to appoint a single lead for those teams. We then transfer staff in. We then ask that team leader to come back with some opportunities to do things faster, better, smarter, and cheaper over a period. But on day one, those people know what they're going to be doing, if that makes sense. Then the final dimension is terms and conditions. So if I go back to my example of being the managing director of local government for Enterprise, running their 31 contracts for maintenance, we were really comfortable with having, we were an outsourcing company, delivered those services back to councils and the Royal Parks, and we took on their staff and we grandparented their terms and conditions. Then we had our own set of terms and conditions for new recruits and for people who were promoted. So we were comfortable having a number of T's and C's across. That's what we need to do to keep stability. So we've got 3 sets of terms and conditions within the system. We've got the 2 councils and we've got the treatment area. So you've got three collectives there, effectively. So what I'm suggesting, I mean, there may be some changes needed to do a bit of alignment where we can, but minimize that really so that you're keeping people stable. They're not worrying about whether everything's going to change and they're focusing on the customer when you go live. But then you gradually work through those, and over time, with an ageing workforce, we end up with a situation where the vast majority of people are on the new organisation's terms and conditions. I hope that sort of addresses your concerns.
No, it doesn't. Just to follow up from there, it's just a comment. I know that there's a lot of people watching this organisation saying all that we're doing is adding a fat layer of management in and duplicating what we've got. So, you know, that sort of approach will give effect to that view. And so I think I'm happy with your explanation, but I mean, how we communicate that is going to be really critical in terms of that plan.
So I think the other side of it is on the money and really delivering some big savings going forward, making sure that we don't underspend on our capital programme or overrate, because many water entities do overrate in that space. Looking to make sure that we've got really long-term debts because our assets are over a very long period. If we have longer terms, we can free up some money to spend it on the right things. Having an aggressive savings programme so that we have shared services, we standardise things going forward. All of these things, I think, really address that customer. And fundamentally, what they most notice is how much are they going to pay. So we need to make sure that we've got moderate bills, not very high ones.
Deputy Mayor Murray Bench.
I thank you for that presentation. It was a bit unique and which was delightful. Community, where does that count in your promotion of keeping people informed? That's my first question.
I think, first of all, I want to have, as I said earlier, a proactive communications program with a number of streams around it, and right front and centre will be the community to go out to reach out. I don't want to do what, still being in the Wellington region a bit of time, you know, seeing adverts on buses and on the TV. I think it's probably more important to get out proactively to tell people what the new organisation, it would be helpful to have a name, but to tell people what the new organisation is about and to talk to them about their concerns and do that on a regular basis. So community associations, ratepayer associations, those sorts of things, I think we need to work very hard as an organisation in that space. I think secondly, we need to make sure that the bills are moderate and the increases are moderate. And thirdly, we've got to bring the team together well and make sure that we do a really good job. We have minimal complaints, that we do what we promise we deliver, and all the basic things.
Right. You mentioned about inflation, it could go up. Knowing that the government, whichever one is in power, has a responsibility to keep that inflation from 1 to 3, and it looks as though it might slip out a bit this time.
Yeah.
But it won't be good if this water services has an inflation that is embarrassingly high.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying we need to change the way we work with the private sector. We need to smooth our capital programs out. We need longer term arrangements to tie good regional providers in with us. We'll need to look at in-house operations to keep the market. All those things we're going to need to look at to deal with that.
One of the things I've found that the company that does some work, on a longer term, they get a bit slack. And how do you keep the incentives on those big players to make sure they deliver a quality service, that we don't have people moaning, bring back the little fellow?
Yeah. So first of all, I think having people who are rooted in the region is a real plus for all of those reasons. They're going to be much better at recruiting from the local area, etc., and that's critical. The second thing is always, where you've got a long-term arrangement, have competitive tension in that partnership all the way through. So yesterday we agreed a very big renewals partnership at EOY, and there are 4 partners on that partnership. It's nearly $700 million. But you only get the work within the partnership if you deliver. And if you deliver well, you'll get work. If you're not delivering well, you won't get as much. The other 3 companies will get the lion's share of the work. So what we've tried to do is keep that competitive tension in the partnership, but we're open to ideas. We want to move away from short-term contractual, where you get the contract out now, to good relationships, understanding each other, long-term approaches, recruiting apprentices and cadets, but still it being a tough relationship. If you don't deliver, you don't get the work.
So my last question, sir, is how do you get a good relationship when councillors are asking for results? Where do you see your role in that? And my other last question is, what's the relationship between you and the board of directors?
So, right, okay. So with councillors, I think it's really important that myself and with the chair of the board spend a fair bit of time with you to make sure that we're addressing the issues that you will set for us in the shareholder expectations, and that we are, I want to be clear about my own objectives once the board's in place, about what I'm going to do over the next 2 years, etc. So I think that's all really, really important, to have face time with councillors. So what I said to councillors in Waikato District and Hamilton, for example, is on every major issue, we will come and talk to you at an early stage, and we'll do the same with iwi, to make sure that when things are being developed in wet concrete before they're finalised, we're talking that through with you. You are on the journey. We'll workshop those things with you. If you want to come to our board, it's too late. By that time, when there's a paper on the board, it's a done deal, is the reality. So it's about making sure that we're proactive on the big issues, that we do workshop the options with you and show why we're moving in a particular, and that gives you an opportunity to give us feedback. We build a relationship. We don't see that divorce that we saw, if you like, in Auckland with some of the CCOs. I thought they were very professional, high quality, but the relationship with the parent council was a bit broken.
Yes, is this your last?
And that is, we're a growth local area. We developers take the risk. How do you see your relationship with the developers to make sure that you keep councils honest and you keep the development going? I could elaborate a lot, but it would be pointless today.
Can I reckon that before I answer that, I just want to come back to your board question, which I didn't answer. Just to say, obviously, it's your decision to appoint the board. I think the point you raised about the chair being involved in the other board appointments is really important, because you want a board as a team, not just a group of talented individuals. So I think that achieves that. There needs to be, I need to be joined at the hip with the chair and the board. We need to be one. There needs to be a long-term partnership. There needs to be clarity and a shared vision, and working in perfect harmony, if you like. So that's the answer there, and I'm absolutely committed. It's your decision. I will spend time with each of the prospective board applicants to make sure that they know what they're going to be potentially walking into, and I think that starts to build a relationship. I think in terms of growth, we want to be in a situation, we're going to have extra headroom, financial headroom going. We can do more than the two councils could separately. So we can make 2 and 2 equal 5. We need to build up, just as we need to build a strong relationship with iwi and councils, we need to build a strong relationship with the development community. I'm keen to do that in a way that, if you like, we sit behind the two councils, that you're the front door for development, but we're behind there working in an integrated team, in an integrated way, a one-stop shop with the council staff in that space. But we need to get out and build a relationship with the major developers, and we need to be can-do. If you can't do it there, we'll do it. Here's a way you can do it. And that's the default position should be yes, not no. And if it is no, how can we turn it into a yes? So it's that sort of a culture I'd like to create. And I've been doing that in Hamilton and Waikato, which is also growing at a similar rate to Western Bay and Taronga. They've got 20 fast tracks, so it's a lot of work, but a lot of exciting work.
Now, would you prefer tangata whenua rep Kylie Smallman or just Kylie?
Kia ora, Kevin. Just firstly, really enjoyed your presentation. When you said you had some sketches, I was quite surprised to see the artistry in there. So I enjoyed it. It was quite refreshing. My question is around the treaty settlements that you mentioned up there and how you will support that process. Can you give me an idea of your thinking around that process and what sort of experience you have sort of facilitating those sensitive areas?
So the first thing I would say is it starts with relationships and no surprises. So I think the first thing I want to do, and I've already talked with Karen and Chris about building an engagement program with iwi and Hapu, and using the fora that exist and just getting to know people is step number one. I think there are a number of challenges that I'm aware of already. So the wastewater treatment plant, for example, I've already got to know some of the key players there, and that's something I will get into. I think we need a balance. Probably the water services strategy is the opportunity. We need to show, as part of that water services strategy, that we can do something special, because we are going to have extra headroom over the period. We need to do it in a measured way, get over the line without falling over first. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But having done that, let's have some exciting capital schemes that do address some of the central issues in the communities and with iwi. So having some schemes that really are seriously addressing Te Mana o Te Wai would be, going back to my story earlier outside this room, results, delivery, and outcomes. I think that's what you're looking for, isn't it? And I'm not an expert. I have been, I'm from the UK, as you know. I'm still learning about biculturalism here, but I'm a listener, and I know there's a lot of talent in the iwi community, and I'm prepared to work with that community going forward, and judge us on results, really, would be what I would say.
Councillor Schuler and then Crowther, then we might move on to the next. Councillor Schuler.
Thanks, Kev. Yeah, also from your pictures, the lovely sky and clouds. Good. It looks like you're an optimist. It came through, and even the one we had back in the Stone Age was still blue skies. So, yeah, good to see you bringing that with you. My question's around. A couple of times you mentioned about this isn't a divorce; it's younger brother growing up, or it's maybe giving one of your children shares in the family business. So I suppose, and we probably, this group, are going to be a big part of the face of that in terms of dealing with what the councils are losing and what's gaining. So I suppose just a bit more flesh out that a bit in terms of what this group and what you think is going to be critical to make sure that it isn't after, doesn't become a big fight and we actually get through this harmoniously.
So probably telling a little bit of the EY story would be helpful, because I think it fundamentally it was about relationships and taking people on the journey and no surprises. They're the basic principles for me. So yeah, we're becoming an autonomous, we're going to have our own incorporation, we're going to be an autonomous organisation, the board will have some quite wide powers. But long term, if we're not working in partnership with the council and with the community, we will fail. That's the fundamental issue. In EOI, we had a focus on a safe transition, but we did some groundbreaking stuff. We had a significant reduction in the planned increases for water for the community. There's a new growth charge, which is quite significant. That'll generate millions of dollars. There's a long-term renewals program, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to go through all of those major things. Yet, in October, we had 2 new mayors, 10 new councillors, and we got unanimous support from both councils, and we got unanimous support from Waikato Tainui. So how did that happen? Yours truly spent a lot of time walking the corridors, talking to people, having cups of tea, making sure one-to-ones, early briefings before decisions were made so that people felt a sense of involvement. That's the heart of it. And instilling that culture amongst the wider team so that it's not just me, it's the way we do things around here. I think that's the heart of it. If you reflect on the Auckland experience, personally I think Watercare, Auckland Transport, the Economic Development Organisation, I've forgotten its name, they're all really good organisations, but the councils were very critical of them because those relationships weren't as close as they should be, for whatever reason. That's the thing, and I think full and frank conversations with you, but then I think we've got to do the hard yards with council and with iwi so that there are no surprises, we take people on the journey, and we're honest all the way through. Does that make sense?
Councillor Crowther?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I guess my comment on how that kind of information could be used would be that it's probably more in-house at the moment. I think it's really helpful there's so many questions it raises, obviously, in there. From a public narrative, I think my perception is people are a bit over the whole Havelock North thing, and I think it doesn't key in well to this area. I think the narrative that I hear is backed up by evidence, which is what we're told by our staff, what we're told from feedback from public surveys, which is that people in Tauranga, and I think Western Bay, have strong support for what councils have done in waters. Now, I'm not saying that's all tickety-boo, but I'm just saying if there is a different narrative that you're seeing, it would need to be very carefully explained because the public are fully on board with the councils saying this has been a great area of success. So I think that's, and to see some of that New Zealand-wide context is almost feels a bit irrelevant to a lot of people, I think. Notwithstanding that, the issue of where the money's spent has been a big thing in recent years, and you mentioned that the sort of not investing enough in the waters. That's not really what we've got from our waters team, but I do see that pattern, and looking at the numbers and trying to factor in, construction cost inflation, it's definitely taken a dive in some areas. Stormwater is the one where I think the public are complaining to people like me. I don't think they have a clue what's going on with wastewater unless there's some notice in the paper or a story in the paper. And then drinking water, they know the Waiari was a big expenditure item, and they know that the iwi has a view. And those are probably the two things they know. And then they sort of go, well, water's coming out of the tap. Hopefully, it's all it's all going along, ticking along. So that'd be my sort of commentary on it. And I think it'd be really helpful to get, your more detailed, what the analysis shows in terms of comparative, post-inflation kind of spend that you might be looking at. Because the big sensitivity I think the public will have is they will feel like they're getting a new entity and losing contact with elected members on this. And so what is like, who can they call? They won't be able to call a board of directors, I believe. So, and it won't be your phone number. So I think that's what they'll be interested in. Like, I don't think they're complaining about much apart from some stormwater, but they will want to know that just like they've called the council, just like they've called their councillors, they can contact someone. And that was left hanging there, like, that's all very well, but what about us, I think will be the view.
So if I could push back on the first observation, I do think it's relevant to paint the national problem because actually we're at the other end of the spectrum as to council areas. It shows us up really well. I'm paying homage to Western Bay and Tauranga. So for example, The average age of pipes in most of New Zealand is in the late 30s, and it's in the early 20s in Tauranga and Western Bay because we're younger communities. Water loss is in the 20s in most of New Zealand, and it's in the teens in Tauranga, low teens. So, and I could go through other ones, but the point of another area is 20% of treatment centres operating on expired consents, 0 here. So the point of doing that is to show us the reality in a good light. I think that's important that our staff see that, actually, and the public, because they get a sense that actually it's pretty high. But I've been very impressed. And the drinking water treatment plant is state-of-the-art. It's very, very good. On stormwater, this was one of the areas I probably don't need to go through my slides because I think we're dealing with them in Q&A. I am worried about stormwater. I mean, first of all, the cyclones, I think, underlined the challenge, didn't they? You know, we've got some massive challenges. It has been the poor relation. The legislation's not great in this space. Tauranga, along with a number of other major cities, funds it through capital rates. It's an appropriate way to fund stormwater, but it's not allowed under the Water Services Act. But at the same time, we don't want to have a situation where we have wastewater and drinking water all sorted, and we're left with a poor relation of stormwater, given all the recent national events here, the cyclones, the tornado, et cetera, we need to be seen to be addressing this. So I'm really keen, as part of the water services strategy, that we do champion some significant schemes. I think the second thing I would be saying is do not change that capital rating anytime soon. Let's get a bunch of chairs with the minister post-election to say, come on, why can't we capital rate as water entities? Why do we want to disrupt a load of customers? Anyway, what's the big gain of that? It's a funding mechanism. What's the problem with water services agencies being given the powers in the stormwater space so that we can join it up? In terms of the relationship with the customer, coming back to that safe transition, I think my objective on day one is they don't notice the difference, that we maintain the service, we don't mess things up. That's the important first step. I think further down the line as we transform, we've got to do all of the savings things that we were talking about earlier and make sure that we keep bills moderate. We don't have abrupt changes because that gets people very, very wound up and unhappy. That we use our extra capital. If we're able to get some aggressive savings, we can fund more things, get more from the same. So have some really visible schemes that perhaps Tauranga or Western Bay couldn't quite afford, that we can now as a new entity, so we're seen to be making a difference. And then I think with the new digital platform going forward, having much better customer service, and you deliver what you promise, you get very speedy responses. They're the sorts of things, but that's longer term. Day one, don't mess it up would be the first thing. Keep the bills low. And have some visible demonstrations that we're doing some extra things that hadn't been addressed.
I guess I don't know if we even need to try and get a whole lot better from everything I've heard around water and wastewater customer-facing stuff. I mean, I just have not been aware of any problems at all, but I think the stormwater stuff it comes to councillors. Is my observation. Yeah. And I think that's the gap that's there.
Agreed.
It's like who's going to do that? I would be interested in your stormwater slides if you've got slides on that, because that's obviously it's a passion of mine. Yeah. So
I think I've sort of covered it in my answer to you earlier. But
if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank our new CE, Kevin, for his presentation and his slides. Much appreciated. We've all learnt a lot on how to do things differently already. Do I have anyone who wishes to move Deputy Mayor Murray Benge? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Crowther. All those in favour? Do you wish to speak to it? Yes.
Yes, I'd like to speak to it because I think that was really worthwhile, and I just appreciate the fact that you were able to have such an overview so early, and I think it goes well for the future of this organisation. So thank you, sir.
Councillor Crowther, do you wish to comment? No? Anyone else? No? I'll put it that we accept the CE's verbal report. All those in favour? Right. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Now we move on to item 8.4.
Yeah, so I'll just say a few words.
Establishment. Oh, yes.
I'll just say a few words of introduction, if I may, Chair. Cathy Davidson will cover the report and answer the questions. What we have done is Cathy and I have worked through this to make sure that the establishment plan reflects some of the conclusions in what we should do differently going forward. And just to underline, you know, very impressed with what I've seen. I think the operations are great. The level of service is good. The water loss is low. We don't have the renewals challenge that most places have. We do have challenges in the stormwater area, and I think our opportunity to begin to address that is through the water services strategy. But we have incorporated those findings in the establishment programme. So over to Cathy.
Kia ora. I'm Cathy Davidson. I'm the Establishment Program Manager, so I've had a little bit of a job title since we wrote the paper, job title change. So the paper that we put together is the plan to get us to the to 1 July 2027. So that's our next big key date. The establishment team have been working on this as a key focus since we got the green light back in April when Kevin came on board. So we are getting our heads around exactly what needs to be done. So the plan itself will form part of a new transition agreement that will come to you via our legal workforce, work stream. That transition agreement will replace the current commitment agreement that's between the two councils. So the transition agreement then becomes an agreement between the two shareholder councils and the newly formed establishment water organisation. So the paper that I've put together has an attachment that covers off the key milestones, and it also provides for you, I've done a one-pager in terms of a timeline. So I might not be a good artist, but I can develop a little wee timeline for you on a single page. So tried to keep it simple and keep it at the most important outputs and milestones that this group will need to achieve. So underpinning the establishment plan, we've had a focus on customer, financial sustainability, a reliable water network, compliance, safety and integrated service delivery. Additionally, we're looking at that the safe staff transition. And in order to get us going, we have now appointed people to all of the workstream lead positions. And we've actually added a new workstream lead in there, which is strategy, policy and bylaw. So as we got into the detail, it was quite evident just how large that was going to be. I think Ariel has got a list about as long as your arm on the amount of work and the amount of policies and bylaws that need to be looked at and assessed, and we'll be doing that in 3 chunks. What needs to be done before day one, for day one, and then what can wait till after day one. So, yeah, I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Any questions for Cathy on our work plan? It appears to be a very well-written presentation. Kevin?
Just to add, that key milestones really is a sort of the key issues that the Joint Committee needs to deal with. It's just so if you feel we've missed anything out, it's a good time to shout. We're also really keen that we identify those issues we need to brief the councils on and get decisions from the council on. So I'm really keen, if you go back to the previous presentation, that we do brief the council on that, actually, and show what changes we're making to the establishment programme in the light of that. I think that would be a good thing to do, probably packaged up with any recommendations you may have for the new board and all that sort of stuff. So I think there would be an obvious early opportunity to do that, if that makes sense. And if that could be done together rather than separately through Western Bay and Taronga, you know, symbolically to bring you together. If you think that's practical, I'd be interested in your views on that.
Now, I'd definitely support a joint council meeting to receive the presentation from our Chief Executive. That'd be fine. Questions, Mayor Denyer, you had your hand up, and then Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, so I'm just on page 18, and it's the milestones and deliverables. And I'm just checking that the timing for where it says foundational documents, Constitution Shareholders Agreement, and that says decisions council June 26. I presume, is that a typo, or is that when we're first looking at a draft, or what's the... Because
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get... That sounds like a lot of documentation to look through in the next few days.
The work's done. It's coming to this committee on the 29th of June. I think in practice it'll be going to council probably end of July or something, I'm assuming.
Yeah, if I can make a comment. So you did most of the work through the joint committee, because remember you did the work in the joint working group, and then you took that to council and you signed off all of those commercial terms. So all these documents are doing are taking all of those decisions and turning them into the formal document with all the other standard bells and whistles that you'd normally have. As Kevin has said, it's substantively done, and there hasn't really been anything new come out of the work that we've done that has highlighted we've got to come back and ask you to review any of your decisions or any gaps in the decisions, because it was such a comprehensive process. We haven't found anything else. So I think you can take credit for have done a lot of the work in that sort of January, February, March, and this is just bringing it together into a formal document.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Crowther, you had your hand up.
I had exactly the same question.
Yes, Hakapa.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. So I'm not sure if this question is directed at either you or Christine about the cadence of the new arrangement. So you recall in the work that you've just been referring to, many decisions we just made on the understanding that we hadn't established a clear solution to some of them. But in the interests of let's get this done and pick it up later, I'm just curious as to how those things get picked up from in this new arrangement. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I'll get that. It'll come through that work plan that Kathy's just spoken around. So these two first documents, the Constitution and the Shareholders Agreement, they are what you've already discussed, and I think they were all agreed. There were a whole series of parked matters, park and return matters. There were a series of sort of principled conversations that still needed to be had, and particularly in the tangata whenua space. So at the next meeting, we're going to be bringing you a very high-level work plan on the tangata whenua matters, building on all of the work that you did through those first 3 months of this calendar year as a starting point, plus the stock take, plus the tangata whenua paper that was presented. I think it was you presented in you presented in February. So we've pulled all of that material, we're pulling all of that material together into a first high-level work plan of tangata whenua matters that will come here, and then I think as that then plan, we get your input, feedback, and work out how we're going to then roll that forward. That will be where a lot of those discussions will happen. So we've tried to capture it there, and there are a number of other issues which would predominantly come through the statement of expectations, because you've identified issues to be addressed in the statement of expectations, but not necessarily the specific detail of the content. So that's a conversation to be had. So I think that is to come. This first bunch is, as I said before, it is what you've already decided, and we didn't think there was anything but yet at that. So once that will start to come to you at the next meeting, and then you will give us guidance and direction about how you want to see that shaped moving forward.
Do you want a supplementary? Yes.
Supplementary, please. Excellent. That's good to know and expected. I'm just unclear as to the contribution to the solution to those questions that we've left. Is that a merged responsibility between the new organisation, or is it? You're right. Okay.
It will be, because the new organisation will be taking on those responsibilities, but also you'll recall there were resolutions and undertakings by the councils that those arrangements would be no less favourable than they currently are. Is it so? Remember we had a discussion on how we would word that. So
I think didn't we word it? They will be either the same
they
or
will
better
be
than what
something,
they
yeah,
are.
of that nature. So therefore the councils need to be involved, because we understand what the current arrangements are and we don't want to lose any of those, and we need to transfer those, at least transfer those across. And so it is going to have to be a partnership between the councils in terms of the arrangements that Western Bay Plenty Council currently has with iwi and hapu, the arrangements that Tauranga City Council has, how they can perhaps come together, and what arrangements the new water organisation in conversations with Tangata Whenua want to have, what that needs to look like. So it's a four-way glue here that we need to work on, and that's what we're starting to reflect in the plan that will come back, and if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, no, that's excellent. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I think what might transform the nature of that discussion is the early appointment that Kevin's alluded to in terms of the Tangata Whenua capability within the new organisation, and that might help with those developments. Thank you very much. Kia ora.
Before I pass over to the Deputy Mayor, Margaret Murray Benj, I'll just make a comment. This is part of the roadmap that I'm hoping that we, as this Waters Organisation Committee, can develop. So when we hand over all the foundation documents, and the work program and where we've got to, we also hand over an engagement mechanism by which the new waters entity knows who it's responsible to engage with and how often and how much lead time they need to engage, to ensure that all that information can be processed, absorbed, talked about, and then come back to the organisation. We need to get this right, because as we've already learnt in this process, one small mistake can delay us by weeks. So we need to put a roadmap in place by which the Waters Organisation is very clear on its role, its function. Primarily it's about delivering the community water in a very economical way, but bring the community with us while we're doing it. And we need to make sure we get that right. Deputy Mayor.
Just curious, why do we need to recruit a tangata whenua specialist when we've got expertise round this table?
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of the developments we're doing, we want to make sure that we really have, in practical terms, when we go through every scheme, that we really do engage with the full community. And a lot of that, we're doing a piece of work in Hamilton now, which is a new southern wastewater treatment plant. It involves potentially incurring on some historic sites. There's going to be discharges, and we need to work through with a iwi group there, but also with the local community in that way. So it's more at that operational level. And we had provided for that within the draft structure that I inherited from, which the team had put together. The only change I've made is to have that person reporting directly to me, so that I'm connected, and it's part of what I was saying earlier. It may well be that it's an internal person within the system, that's already doing this work. So that, it's part of we have these teams in the councils already. So it may well be that, there may be someone applying from inside, but we will go through an open process.
It just bugs me, sir, that we have tangata whenua involved in, and I'm saying it's so supportive, with the out channel through Matakana Island, and they've been heavily involved all the way through. So to have another specialist come in to what? I can't quite see. So if it's internal, that makes sense. But keeping people informed is so important.
the role will be primarily about engaging and preserving relationships so no one gets left out or missed, and that's going to be the key. And they're going to have to perform that function across both councils, across all iwi and hapu from the whole Western Bay region. So maintaining relationships is going to be a challenge. I envisage the first 6 months to a year is going to be the most challenging time to make sure they've picked everyone up. And that's the real key. Councillor Crowther?
You've got a question. I see the draft water services strategy will be in November, and the consultation is for March, and I don't personally think that would be a good thing to do. I think the first time this entity goes out and has a conversation with our community, it needs to be something which is not just overwhelmed by a very significant long-term plan amalgamation conversations, which will be pretty clear what we're going to be doing then probably. And then the whole issue of what I've been told in terms of transport, which is probably higher profile than waters, dare I say, we've been told to do some early engagement is fine, but then it would all have to be directed to a regional land transport conversation with our communities in February. So you're going to end up having February, March actually. So you're going to end up, depending on the precise timing, this huge number of things at once. And to me, it will not do it justice. So is there any way we can get out of that?
Shall I tell you where we are? Look, I think in some ways it's an advantage to be doing it hand in glove with the two councils at the same time as their own long-term plan processes, because that's going to be easier for the public. There is a risk that we confuse them, I agree. But I think that's far easier than it was in EOI, where we were doing it out of cycle. So one of the challenges we had with EOI was getting any interest, frankly, because we were doing it outside of the long-term plan cycle. By buddying up with the two councils and using their processes, there is a big advantage in that. However, I do think you're right. Don't think that should be the first they've heard about us. I think we need a pre-engagement program, which is why I was sort of saying earlier, you know, we need to be thinking about community associations, ratepayer groups, developers, contractors, iwi, et cetera, so that we've got it's part of how we do things here, and there needs to be a program so that, if you like, the long-term plan, water services strategy discussions are not the first thing. They're on the back of others. But very happy to put that into a draft program and actually have that discussed here so that we can knock it about and get it right.
I think it'd be good to integrate it with those other things and have it at councils. And my view is that, yes, it could work, but it would need to be so integrated that it would not be a platform for the water organisation so much as just an integrated conversation with communities from councils. And that I could see that working. And I guess the other question is, will you have, I don't even know what's required here, but will you have a 10-year CapEx program and OPEX program outlined on a one-page spreadsheet, just like we do in our summary now? And in that case, to me, the integration could be helpful in the sense that it's all going to be a burden on the ratepayers ultimately, so they will have to do trade-offs between, the costs that are going to fall on them depending on what the water organisation says.
Yeah. So the purpose is, the point is to do it together. That's exactly what we're working on at the moment. There may be some niche areas we do outside of that, with, for example, the water delivery community, the development community, etc. But I think there's a lot of common ground, and doing it up in a joined-up way, where there's a sort of one-stop shop, does make a lot of sense. But what I'm happy to do is come forward with the draft program, and we can knock it about and discuss it to get it right.
I think that'd be helpful. And I presume what we're thinking is to have one page, not like one website page, which actually has it all together, like transport, waters, and the LTP, because then it could work. But otherwise, I think it's just going to be silly. Last time we saw that happen with transport too, it just got no airtime at all because it wasn't linked in.
Christine, did you wish to comment?
So we haven't yet focused on how it's going to be presented to the community, but in terms of the timing, it's really important that there is alignment because there's so much interface, particularly between the stormwater and waters, particularly in growth areas. And so you don't want to have the council making investment commitments that are integral to having aligned waters investment commitments and on different timeframes. So the idea is they are actually going to work in parallel. We're going to have the connection and discussions together. And then how we present that to the public, I think, is a really good conversation. So at the moment, we've just got our heads in how do we make this best work in terms of trying to get alignment across three organisations now, really, because the Waters organisation is going to have to manage its capital program and its debt management, fitting in with the transport and other investments of Tauranga City Council and fitting in with the transport and growth initiatives of Western Bay Plenty District Council. So those three bits have all got to dovetail together. So it's really important that the two councils working on their LTP in parallel to the Waters organisation working on its water services strategy.
Yeah, through the chair, I sort of took that as read and don't see a problem. We've done it before for decades, so hopefully we can still pull it off.
Yep. But in terms of how we present that, I think it's a really good conversation and we can work through that as a three-way partnership between the two councils and the Water Org.
Ariel, and a quick what your role is?
Kia ora. My role is Strategy, Policy and Bylaws Lead for the Water Organisation. The other part of that conversation too is around charging and rating. So that integration between Council and the Water Organisation is really critical that we do those things together to make sure that we get that alignment as well. But just reiterating what Christine said, happy to come and have that conversation about the how as we progress.
I believe Kevin had a follow-up statement.
Yeah, just in terms of what we're required to do under the Water Services Act, really, just so everyone is clear. So we have to have a 10-year plan. We have to have a 3-year pricing plan as part of that. We have to formally consult with both councils. It's the board decision going forward, but we'll formally consult with two councils. Because it's our first one, it's obvious it's going to pass the significant test, so we need to have a full public engagement programme. I think we're quite lucky that we've got both councils doing their LTPs. We haven't sorted all the details out of some of the questions you're asking, but they're fair questions. We need to do that in a way that's easy for the public to understand, but to have the opportunity, I think we've got an opportunity because you're doing your long-term plan consultations to get more attention than we would otherwise do and doing it on our own. But we definitely need to have some sort of pre-engagement program so people know who on earth we are and all of that. But there's a lot to work through here. We haven't done all of that work yet. We will definitely be discussing that with you and welcome your input and ideas.
Oh, sorry, the Honourable Kiritepa Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably looping a little bit back to the discussion you were having with Hakupa, or collectively having with Hakupa. I'm just trying to step through my own thinking, and Kevin, you mentioned this in your overarching presentation. The treaty settlement lay of the land in Tauranga Moana isn't quite the same as Waikato. So you've got the obligations to carry through by dint of the previous decisions made, no less or better conditions that already exist in relationship to water. But we've also just had the Ngāti Ranginui settlement that's just gone through about a year ago, so that comes with new obligations. And then there's, of course, the Ngaitirangi settlement, which is in its state of settlement stage. So I guess just coming back to that internal competency that is required within the organisation, because Section 7 carries through to, of course, the water organisation. I would think that it'd be, and I'm sure you're across this, but I think it'd be somebody that's very technically minded as well in terms of what the actual statutory obligations are under each of those acts.
So it's interesting. It's interesting what you're saying. There's a program in EOI which is with obviously the Tainui, where the senior team are going through that. I'm actually going on the TCC one, I can't remember when it is. It's in my diary already. It is something as part of an organisational development program for the new organisation. I think we need to look at what does the manager look like in the new water organisation. It'd be helpful when we get a name, because otherwise you don't know what to call it. But you know, which covers a number of dimensions, including this. So I think that's something I will want. We are looking at a sort of organisational development program at the moment, so I want to make sure that this base is covered off and part of that.
I'm just thinking because those other arrangements that have existed for some time, they simply will be, we're in a new kind of terrain, and yeah, I think that you want some wise counsel in terms of, particularly I'm just thinking of the legal obligations.
Yeah, no, I get that, and get people from outside, from the EU organisations being part of that programme on the teaching side, if you like. So yeah, open-minded about that, very interested. I think there's some opportunities there.
Thank you. Yes, we are very aware and had lengthy discussions about how we're going to achieve all this before 1st of July 27. There's a lot to get through in a very short space of time. Are there any more questions? Right, yeah, that appears to be the end of questions. We have before us item 8.4, Establishment Work Plan Recommendations. The Waters Organisation Joint Committee receives the Establishment Work Programme, notes a summary of the Establishment Work Programme, incorporates the findings of the Waters Organisation CEO 50-day review, notes a summary of the Establishment Work Plan as provided in the report. I'll let you read the rest. Do I have someone prepared to move? Mayor Denny is happy to move. Hakopa is happy to second. Do you wish to speak to it? No? No? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Any late items for discussion? No? Hakopa, since you did us the honour of opening, would you do this honour of closing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. O tira tēnā tātou kato, tō tātou hui tuatahi, ko tutuki pai nei. Thank you, everybody, for our first meeting. Very simple, very informative discussion. And thank you, Kevin, for the clarity of your presentation. And thank you, congratulations, Mr. Chair. I'll close our meeting. Unuhia ki te urutapu noi. Kia ngāwari kia māma te ia o nā wai. Tēnei te waka ka whakatere kia tau atu ki te whenua haukuri i wawatatia ai e tātou. Tūturu whakamaua kia tīna. Haumie hui e. Kia ora.